Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really getting into some foundational ideas, the kind that help us make sense of, well, society itself. We're tackling a huge question: what holds society together? Or maybe what's always trying to pull it apart? And to do that, we're looking at two absolute giants, Karl Marx and Émile Durkheim. They looked at the same world, more or less, but saw radically different things.
It's a fascinating contrast, isn't it? You have one perspective that zeroes in on conflict, on power struggles, deep divisions as sort of the default state. And then almost at the same time, another perspective looking at that exact same world and seeing, harmony, interdependence, how all the parts function together, understanding both is, well, it just gives you a much richer way to think about things.
Okay, let's start with Karl Marx. Now, for a lot of you, his name probably means conflict theory, this idea that society is just constant struggle. But let's unpack that a bit. What did Marx really mean, especially when he looked at capitalism? His core idea really was that society is always in conflict, driven by competition for, limited resources. He saw it as almost baked into the system.
Right. He really broke society down, simplifying it to two main groups. On one side, the bourgeoisie. These are the owners, basically. They controlled what he called the means of production, factories, land, capital, all the economic levels, Think of them as owning the game board.
Okay, the owners. And the other side?
The proletariat, the working class. They didn't own the factories or the land. They owned essentially nothing but their ability to work, their labor power, which they had to sell to the bourgeoisie just to survive.
So, okay, the owners need the workers. Why wouldn't they just pay them fairly?
Yeah.
What did Marx mean by saying the relationship itself was inherently exploitative?
Yeah, that's absolutely crucial. Marx argued the bourgeoisie extracts something called surplus value. So imagine a worker makes, say, a chair. Takes them a few hours, materials cost a certain amount. But the owner sells that chair for much more than the worker's wages plus the material costs. That extra bit,
The profit.
that profit, Marx called it surplus value. He saw it as the value created by the workers' unpaid labor. That's the engine of profit, and for Marx, the fundamental theft at the heart of capitalism.
Wow. So it's not just about who owns stuff, but about this invisible extraction of value. And how did he think this whole system, this inequality was maintained? It seems like people would notice.
Well, that's where ideology and false consciousness come in. Hugely important concepts for Marx. Ideology for him was basically the set of ideas and beliefs promoted by the ruling class, the bourgeoisie. Ideas that make the system seem fair, natural, maybe even inevitable, when, from his perspective, it absolutely wasn't.
Okay, so ideology is like the story the powerful tell. What's false consciousness then?
False consciousness is when the working class, the proletariat, actually buys into that story. They accept the dominant ideology, they don't see their own exploitation clearly, or they think the system is just the way things are. It's like they don't recognize their own collective interest in changing things, almost working against themselves unknowingly.
Kind of disturbing. It makes you think, how could you possibly see past that if you're caught up in it?
Exactly. And that's why Marx predicted, ultimately, a proletarian revolution. He believed that as capitalism developed, the gap between the rich owners and the poor workers would just grow wider and wider. The exploitation would become more obvious, more intense. Eventually, he thought, the proletariat would develop class consciousness.
Which is?
A collective realization, seeing their shared situation, their shared oppression, their common enemy, if you like. This awakening, he argued, this class consciousness would inevitably lead them to rise up, overthrow capitalism, and create a communist society, one where the means of production, the factories, the land, are owned by everyone communally, eliminating that fundamental class divide.
That's a huge prediction, obviously.
Yeah.
And, well, it hasn't exactly happened everywhere in the way he thought. What are some of the main criticisms of that revolutionary prediction? Did he underestimate something?
Oh, absolutely. Lots of critiques. People point to, the rise of a large middle class, which complicates that simple two-class model. Then there's the impact of labor unions, welfare states, regulations, things that sort of soften the sharp edges of capitalism that Marx observed.
So capitalism adapted.
You could say that. It proved more flexible, maybe, than he anticipated. Reforms happened, which perhaps diffused some of that revolutionary pressure. Plus, identity is complex. It's not just about economic class. People identify with nationality, religion, ethnicity, all sorts of things that can cut across class lines.
Still, even with those critiques, Marx gives us this incredibly sharp lens for looking at power, at inequality, at whose interests a system really serves. You look at debates about wealth concentration today.
Definitely. His ideas still spark debate. They still offer a way to analyze power dynamics, even if you don't buy the whole revolutionary package.
Okay, but let's shift gears. Because around the same time, just across the border really, another brilliant thinker was looking at modern society and seeing something very different. Émile Durkheim.
Right. While Marx was focused on conflict, Durkheim was all about harmony, stability, what holds things together. He's really the father of functionalism. This perspective sees society not as a battlefield, but more like a biological organism, a complex
An
system.
organism. How so?
Like a body, right. It has different parts: family, education, religion, law, the economy, and each part performs a specific necessary function. All these parts work together to keep the whole system and the whole social body healthy and running smoothly. It's about integration and cooperation.
Okay, so if society is this body with interconnected functions, what governs it? What keeps the organs working around? Durkheim talked about social facts. What are those?
Social facts are fascinating. They are basically the values, cultural norms, social structures, things that exist outside of any one individual, but they exert pressure on us. They constrain our behavior. Think about laws or moral obligations or even just social conventions like queuing.
So they're like external rules.
Exactly. They exist independently of you or me. We're born into them. And Durkheim insisted they could and should be studied scientifically, just like facts in the natural world. They reveal the underlying order.
Okay, and he also talked about different ways societies stick together, right? This idea of social solidarity. He mentioned mechanical solidarity and organic solidarity.
Yes, a key distinction. Mechanical solidarity, he said, was typical of older, simpler, traditional societies. People there were held together because they were mostly the same: shared beliefs, shared values, shared work. A strong collective conscience, he called it. Like attracts like.
And organic solidarity. That sounds different.
It is. That's what he saw emerging in modern, complex industrial societies. Here, people are very different. Highly specialized jobs, diverse beliefs. What holds them together isn't similarity, but interdependence. Like the organs in a body, the heart, lungs, brain, they all do different things, but they need each other to survive.
So I'm a baker, you're a sociologist, someone else is a doctor.
Yeah.
We all rely on each other's specialized skills.
Precisely. That mutual dependence creates a new kind of social glue, an organic connection based on difference and necessity.
But what happens if that interdependence weakens? Or if the rules, the norms governing all these complex interactions break down?
Well, that leads to another crucial Durkheim concept: anomie.
Anomie.
Anomie. Anomie is basically a state of normlessness. It happens when social norms become weak or unclear or conflicting. People feel adrift, disconnected from society's guidelines. They might not know what's expected of them or what they can reasonably expect from life. It's a kind of social deregulation.
And he connected this social condition, anomie, to something incredibly personal: suicide rates. How did that work? How does a societal feeling of normlessness affect individuals so drastically?
Well, Durkheim argued, quite powerfully, that when society fails to provide clear norms and a sense of belonging, what he called social integration and regulation, individuals can suffer. A lack of guidance, a feeling of disconnection, of purposelessness, this can increase vulnerability to despair. He wasn't explaining every individual's suicide, of course, but he saw statistical patterns: higher suicide rates in groups or societies experiencing rapid change or weak social ties, suggesting a link between the health of the social organism and individual well-being.
It really underscores how deeply connected our individual lives are to the larger social fabric. So wrapping this up, we've explored two incredibly influential yet really quite different ways of seeing society. We've got Marx seeing conflict, exploitation, and the potential for revolution driven by economics.
And Durkheim focusing on social harmony, function, interdependence, and the dangers of normlessness, of anomie.
Two giants looking at the same world, giving us very different toolkits.
Absolutely. And the key thing is, despite their differences, both offer incredibly valuable ways to analyze the world. They're not just history. They give you lenses, frameworks to understand things happening right now: social movements, economic changes, debates about community, even your own experiences. They help you ask deeper questions.
Okay, so here's something for you, the listener, to mull over. Think about a current social issue that's on your mind. Maybe it's rising inequality. Maybe it's political polarization. Maybe it's concerns about social isolation. Try looking at it through these two lenses. Which theory feels more resonant? Does Marx's focus on power, resources, and conflict explain more? Or does Durkheim's emphasis on shared norms, social function, integration, and potential breakdown seem more relevant? Better yet, what happens when you try to use both? What new complexities or insights pop up when you consider both the conflicts and the functions at play? Something to think about.